Coming up on this episode of Faith Factor.
No amount of being made to go to church or just going to church every week, in my opinion, necessarily qualifies you to be a Christian. You know, there's a lot more involved in that, and I believe you have to make a conscious choice, conscious decision that this is what I want to do. I want to put Christ first in my life.
Factor. Now, we are going to ask a question that I think it's safe to say is quite a controversial question for its time. It does divide quite a few people, but it is a question that is, I would think, quite relevant. Is it easy being a Christian in the music industry? Now, this is something that we are going to talk about with our guest, JB Gill. Now, if you were a teenager in the noughties like me, let me take you down nostalgia lane. It's 2007. A new band has formed on the X Factor, set to sell 10 million records worldwide and take the world of pop by storm. 2013 was the year of the final curtain call, and now one of the members is a successful farmer, TV presenter, and wants to help Zimbabwean farmers to tackle climate change. So today we have on the program the one and only JB Gill. So welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you.
And so honestly, JB, I'm feeling so nostalgic right now. I've had the song Everybody in Love in my head for like the last few days. You must get like people coming and singing classics to you. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? My son is just at the age now where he's starting to delve into my history and ask all the questions about the group and so on. And Everybody in Love is one of his favourite songs as well. So, you know, I'm constantly being sung that at the top of his lungs. But yeah, of course, whenever we see people and they remember, you know, they're fond memories ultimately, and obviously they're fond memories for me too. So it's always sort of taken with a bit of tongue in cheek. It's great.
Excellent. Yeah, no, honestly, you should see the grin on my face. I'm just remembering like when I was 15, homework, and then JLS is playing in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so let's talk more about that. So in your successful music career, was your faith something that you could easily talk about openly, or would you say it's easy being a Christian in the secular music environment?
It's definitely not easy being a Christian in that sort of environment. And to be honest with you, I didn't, I always say to people, it sounds a bit weird, but I didn't really exhibit Christian qualities while I was going through that process. But I think because obviously I grew up in church, and that's something that's, you know, especially, you know, my mother's side of the family has been something that's really evident in you know, my lifestyle and the way that my upbringing. There were things that I did which obviously were reminiscent of that way of life and being a Christian. And I think for me, really, I kind of approached it as two separate things rather than how I try to approach it now as being part of my life and an integral part of what I do and believe in how my life is lived. And, you know, so I would do things like tithes, but then as I say, my lifestyle, you know, clubbing, going out, drunk and variations like that, not necessarily to excess. There wasn't anything, well, from a general society perspective, there wasn't anything that I was doing which was, I guess, untoward. But as I say, it's not a lifestyle that I would necessarily recommend. And it's you know, there were obviously definitely things that, you know, pitfalls, I guess, that you know, myself and the boys would have come across, which I didn't avoid, and probably now, obviously, I would avoid. I wouldn't find myself in a situation where, you know, I drunk to excess and potentially out of control. And so those little things obviously didn't necessarily, you know, as I say, wouldn't be controversial to our world in this day and age, but definitely some things that I'm not extremely proud of, so to speak, you know.
What is your earliest memories of church and church family?
I lived in Barbuda, and I remember I went back not too long ago, and the church that we used to go to, which is a Pentecostal church, is still there, and it's still run by, you know, family friends of ours. And, you know, I've got real fond memories of sort of sitting outside on their porch doing the Sunday school there. I've grown up in every kind of church, whether it's Pentecostal or evangelical or Church of England at school, sang in a choir. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely part of my lifestyle and part of my culture when I was younger. But I always say that, you know, there comes a point in any Christian, like, especially when you grow up in church, there comes a point in any life, you know, and if you're not a Christian, obviously it's usually more dramatic because it's not something that you've ever lived. But as a, someone who comes from a church-going family or whatever, there comes a point where you have to make that decision for yourself. So, I mean, no amount of being made to go to church or just going to church every week, in my opinion, necessarily qualifies you to be a Christian. There's a lot more involved in that, and I believe you have to make a conscious choice, conscious decision that this is what I want to do. I want to put Christ first in my life, and I want to live my life in this way. And so that definitely happened to me, not extremely dramatically, but that definitely happened to me sort of coming into my last years in JLS, and then obviously prior to starting a family and getting married to my wife.
Music in church, most people who've grown up in the church, who venture into music, have had gospel as their background. Would you say that gospel has influenced your appreciation and understanding of music?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously I've grown up singing those songs, and, one of the reasons why I love being a presenter on Songs of Praise is because I grew up with that, every Sunday on TV in the background, you know what I mean? And I love singing those hymns. I love being in the traditional churches, the Church of England or whatever, and singing the old school hymns, which isn't everybody's cup of tea, and especially not our age, sort of in your, late 20s, early 30s. But for me, it's something that I've really enjoyed, and I think it's partially because that's formed my, a big part of my upbringing, but also because I used to play instruments, and I used to, play classical, I used to play the flute, play the piano, play the guitar, record, and so on. And I attended the Centre for Young Musicians, which is like a classical school for kids. And I had to audition for that. I got a place there, and I was able to attend. And for me, the classical influence and that traditional influence is something that's always been close to my heart. I've really enjoyed. So I'm a little bit unusual, yes, of course, I'm into my popular music as well, but it's always been sort of, that old school sound, which I really, really enjoy. And then, obviously when you look at, in terms of performance, in terms of ability, the people that I've seen, influenced by, like Brendan McClurkin and people like that, Kim Burrell, and, obviously big on the American gospel scene, those guys are incredible performers, incredible vocalists. And obviously they all started out in church, and that's kind of where their foundations were. And, that's obviously hugely inspirational for me, and I love the music ultimately.
Another fact that I didn't know is that you actually studied theology in King's College in London. So tell us more about that. What did that involve? Did it help grow your faith?
Again, I was in a place in life where I guess my faith wasn't first and foremost in my life, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do that is because I always, my mum had gone to extremely great lengths in order to send me to private secondary school, and obviously she wanted the best for myself and for my brother, and she sacrificed a lot. I probably will never know exactly what she sacrificed in order to do that for me, and so I do feel very, very privileged that I was able to have that sort of education. It allowed me to excel, it allowed me to develop as an individual, and so for me, although I knew at that stage at 18, I think it was, I wanted to be involved in music, I also knew that it was never going to be guaranteed. I also knew that obviously it's going to be a long journey, and I didn't want to waste the opportunity that I'd been given, and I was more than capable of going to university. So I made the decision to kind of go to university and do my favourite subject, because at least then I would, make sure I get a decent grade and leave with a good degree. And so that's why I chose theology. But, obviously my faith did play a part in that, because consciously, that's something that I love to talk about. It's something that I'm passionate about. And, obviously on the course I was able to learn about ethics, which I think is such a fascinating subject, and morality and things like that we learned about. And then also Jewish studies, which obviously, people familiar with the Bible will know that obviously the Old Testament is very, very much steeped in Jewish history and Jewish religion. And obviously that has a huge impact on the New Testament, which is, with the birth of Christ and obviously Christ's life and times, and then, the commission for followers of Christ, or Christians, thereafter as well. So for me, all of that is just fascinating. And then, we touched on topics like the dogma of the church and differences between Catholicism and Protestantism, history of the church, all of that sort of stuff, what people call the boring stuff, but to me is incredibly fascinating.
So now, as a consequence, how does this newfound faith play into your everyday routine?
Well, now, as I say, it is very much part of my lifestyle. So, before I always used to be focused on, I don't know, finding time to pray or whatever, and trying to make it, I don't know, a set time in a day, a big long prayer. And to be honest with you, I mean, I grew up like that, so I was always in a prayer meeting or in a Bible study with my great aunt. And I think there is a time and a place for that, and I think that is really important, especially when you're discussing with other people who will have different opinions. And it's about you all continually striving for that biblical truth, which you can then apply to your life. But then I think at the same time, it is very much a personal journey as well, and it's important for you to have a personal connection. And ultimately, it's a relationship between you and God. And through prayer, obviously, that's how we communicate, but then through reading the Bible, that's how he communicates. So other ways as well, obviously through people and so on. But I'm just saying, there's obviously so much in the Bible that we can read through and we can learn, we can pray about, and then, as I say, that feeds into our lives. So for me, I think it's essential to read your Bible. And nowadays you can have it on an app if for whatever reason you have any insecurities about reading, a physical Bible or carrying it around or whatever, you can get it on your phone and just sit and read your phone. And then, as I say, you make time to pray. And for me, I can't, especially with a young family and stuff, I can't always get, an hour or whatever in the morning or an hour at night. But, you can pray anywhere, really. You can do it when you're driving in the car. You can do it on the way to pick up kids. You can do it, when you've got 5 minutes and you're doing the washing or whatever. And I think it's important to have that relationship, because ultimately that's what God wants from us. He wants us to give him everything, all the problems of the day, all the things that we're struggling with, and just have that open communication, just like you would with a spouse, just like you would with, a family member or a loved one or your children. Do you know what I mean? It's about having that relationship. So that's what I try to do now.
Last question, I have to ask this. What is your favourite JLS song?
My favourite JLS song is probably Love You More.
Okay.
That was the first song that went to number one that we'd written.
Okay.
And it's I love the creative process. I love being in the studio.
Yeah.
And, it's a really intense session, which doesn't always happen. And I remember being in the studio and we were in a writing session with a guy called Wayne Hector, who's written a couple of songs with us and for us even. And we were working with a new producer. So his name was JB Gill, and he's a really a quirky guy, and he's from Germany originally, lives in LA now. And I think it's one of the first sessions that we'd had sort of working out in LA. And we sat down with him and we were going through various different songs, different types of music and stuff. I'm like, okay, what kind of song can we write, and whether that's going to be the right thing or not or whatever. And I remember we were really stuck for inspiration. We were sat there talking about the new iPads that were coming out from Apple and other bits and pieces. We just really distracted. We didn't actually have that much inspiration there that day. And Toby just said, you know what, I'm going to just jump in the pool, which is another amazing thing about working in LA. I mean, you literally got a pool on your doorstep. You're in a studio in London, and it's all sort of underground, dark windows, no natural sunlight. And over there you've got blazing sun and swimming pools. Anyway, he said he's going to jump in the swimming pool and just to basically chill out. I think we just had lunch, got out of the pool. He just sat down at the piano and started playing something, and we were like, "What are you playing?" Literally just started playing the song for the music to Love You More. He just was playing from scratch, messing about, and we were like, "That is unreal. You need to put that into the computer right now." And we literally just everything just flowed straight out. I think we had a 4 or 5 minute song, which obviously we had to cut down to 3.5 minutes for a single, but it was just so easy, so natural. The song flowed. And obviously it's became one of our biggest hits.
Yeah. And it's amazing what good weather and a nice pool can do to get you up and running. Right, that's the end of this episode of Faith Factor. Thank you so much, JB, for phoning in. Now, you can share with us some of your favourite memories of JLS. We have a Twitter page. You can check us out at GMBA Radio. I'll repeat that again, at the Twitter handle GMBA Radio. And you can also check out our Facebook page. Now, you can also email us at info@gmba.net. That's info@gmba.net. Stay tuned for next week's programme and stay blessed. Peace!